I will be presenting today kind of a workshop report, not too detailed for those who are not familiar or interested in Masorah, but sufficiently detailed to see or to show that to what an extent philological arts are necessary to investigate in order to have you recognize what was taught and learned in Jewish classrooms in the Middle Ages, among other things. And there are enough experts here like Ephraim, welcome, and Soloveitchik, of course. So let's start with the manuscript. Well-known manuscript, Vatican Hebraica 14, was written by Elia ben Berechia Hanagdan, probably in 1239 in Rouen. There will be a working paper published by one of my doctoral students, Bettina Burkhardt, that discusses this question from the new. Elia ben Berechia was the son of a famous father. Berechia Hanagdan is in particular known for the Hebrew translation of the Fox Fables, the Mishneh Sholim. Both father and son were well educated not only in rabbinic culture, but also in contemporary science like natural history, medicine, and others. The peculiarity of Elia's drawings is not only that most of them were made entirely of tiny Hebrew letters, but also that they echo a wide range of genre. Masoretic notes and lists, Masorah Manya, Masorah Figurata, Midrashic material, Bible commentaries, Rashi, even Ezra, you will see today even others, as well as contemporary literature like the Fox Fables. You can see it here, Aryeh Zaken. In addition, Elia's drawings show that he looked closely at his environment, architecture, nature, ritual objects like the menorah. Elia's patron for whom the manuscript was written was a certain Rav Asher, and the manuscript contains the Pentateuch with Onkelos alternating verse by verse, the Haftarot, and the 5 scrolls. In the order, Canticles, Ruth, Lamentation, Ecclesiastes, and Esther. And the order of the scrolls matches exactly the order displayed in the Ashkenazi Pentateuch manuscript by Madonna 1 from 1089, and also the Hebrew-French glossary, Parma Codex 2924, written in Delimont 1279. The order of the scrolls, and I don't need to tell this here, is an important marker for the geocultural provenance of a manuscript. Vatican 14 contains more than 70 figurative micrographic illustrations, all of them kind of door openers for the respective parasha. The figurate, and only the figurate, not the parva or manya, linear parva and manya, from the book of Exodus were edited by Elodie Attia in 2015 as part of the CRC 933 project at Heidelberg. A revised digital edition of the entire manuscript is currently being prepared and successively put online, provided online, open access by our team, Corpus Masoreticum. From the colophon, it's clear that Asher ordered this type of time-consuming and costly decoration drawn by Elia, and that was not the mere idea that came to Elia's mind. This is supported by the fact that the twin manuscript Berlin, OQ9, written in 1233 by Elia ben Berechia, was not nearly as lavishly illustrated and contains less Masorah Figurata. The Aramaic verse-by-verse translation proves in many places that Elia wanted the Targum to be read and studied, be it as a tool for acquiring Aramaic language skills, which would be very promising in view of this Mizal text, be it as an exegetical tool that is an accompanying commentary on the biblical text. He took great efforts to display the layout of the Hebrew text in the Targum in both a reader-friendly and philologically clear manner. Based on the Talmudic prescription in Bavli Brachot 8a that the weekly Torah portion should be read 3 times, twice in Hebrew and once in Aramaic, Shnei Mikra v'Chat Targum, The Ashkenazi rabbis encouraged their members to preserve this custom meticulously, and it's described, as most of you will know, in the Sefer Ozahua, Hilchot Kriyat Shema. Pentateuch editions with the Targum interlined provided the reader with the adequate book, be it for private reading at home or for the accompanied reading during the recitation of the Torah in the synagogue. In her study on Targum layouts in Ashkenazi manuscripts, Eludia Tia observed that mainly in manuscripts from the 14th century onward, the Targum was copied separately in the margins. And regarding the alternating layout in 3 columns to be a standard feature in Ashkenazi manuscripts. Vatican XIV thus displays this standard feature as well. Its size in the medium-sized codex format shows that it was probably used for private study and/or individual reading in the synagogue. Since the interlinear Targum text calls for very careful reading so as not to miss a line, Hebrew Aramaic Pentateuchs could also be and were probably used as a proofreading copy for the public reading from the Torah scroll. In Vatican XIV, Elia always places his figurata illustrations on the bottom of a page. Every parasha gets its own figurative opening. The manuscript is missing its original beginning, but it's very likely that there was a figurata as well related to the beginning of the book of Genesis. Although, and I have to get back once, although one has to admit that Elia was probably not the most gifted illustrator in medieval France. You can see here Rivka. She looks, in my eyes, more than a Mifletzet than a girl. Or the locusts on the bottom. His drawings and mise en texte reveal a clear didactic concept, and he took great efforts to present his material in a well-structured manner. In the following, I will elucidate his teaching concept by presenting an analysis of 2 folio with the menorah, 1 folio that displays the end of Parashat Matot and the beginning of Parashat Mas'eh, as well as a folio dealing with Reuben's Dudaim. And I leave the term untranslated at this point. They provide an interesting insight into the Masoretic and exegetical traditions that were considered as certain must-haves in Northern French Jewish Bible education at the beginning of the 13th century. Okay. On folio 104, recto, we find the first of 2 menorot lampstands that Elia drew from Masoretic lists, quite regular Masorah Manya material. The first micrographic lampstand is connected directly to the beginning of Parashat Vayakel. The second, to be dealt with in short, is found a little bit later, belonging to the beginning of Parashat Ba'alotra, Numbers 8. They look pretty much the same, with the only difference that the figurative lampstand attached to Numbers 8 standing upright, while the other menorah is displayed lying on its side. The first folio, 104, encompasses Exodus 35, 1-15, including the Targum. And the entire section takes up the instructions already given in Parashat Truma in Exodus 25-27. However, whereas Exodus 25-27 gives the divine instructions to Moshe how the work has to be done, Parashat Vayekel reports how the tabernacle and its objects are finally done by Bezalel and Oholiav. The first verses of the parasha refer to Shabbat obligations and prohibitions, the obligation to rest, but I don't think the menorah is lying down because there is a established obligation to rest, and the prohibition on lighting fires in private homes. From Exodus 35:4 onward, the text describes the commandments for gifts and donations needed for the construction of the Mishkan and its objects. Among them, the menorah and its branches and lamps, the garments, the tent, the curtains, and so on. The Masorah Manya and Para notes on this page, and in particular those of which the lampstand is shaped, refer to this description of the Mishkan and its interior. Except one entry in the bottom line of the menorah space that displays a note belonging to Exodus 32, which is Parashat Kitisi. The other references are in situ. The lampstand consists of 7 shorter Masoretic lists, of which the Simanim belong entirely to the report of the erection of the tabernacle and the interior decoration. Everyone who reads the instructions for the menorah in the book of Exodus will soon realize that this description is not easy to understand, and the commentators have struggled with it. You shall make a lampstand of pure gold. Of hammered work shall the lampstand be made. Even its base, shaft, cup spots, and its flowers shall be of one piece with it. To quote Stephen Fine, it's no wonder that the rabbis imagined Moses unable to visualize the object that he was ordered to instruct. Without contextualization, it's tough for us as well. And I might add, it was also tough for Elia for his drawing. We know that Elia had one recension of the Rashi on his desk, and we have therefore to interpret his micrographic illustration always against this background, against the background of this commentary or one of his commentary recensions. However, in this case, it's difficult to entirely reconcile his drawings and Rashi's comments. Let me explain to you some important features of his drawing. The only thing that is drawn quite similar to Rashi's comment is Elias' illustration of the base of the menorah, the term yerecha, and Rashi writes, it's making the shape of a box with 3 legs, shosha raglaim yotzim, downward from it. Rashi offers a precise counting of the single elements, the Giviim, the goblets, 22, the knobs, the kafturim, 11, and the flowers, the prachim, 9. But whatever you count in this image, all these are not displayed in Elias' drawings, exactly as we would then expect them, neither in this place nor in the second illustration of the menorah. Above the base, Elia wrote the lemma miksha, beaten out. You can see it here. Thus marking the exact place from which the individual branches should emerge. He might have taken up Rashi's explanation on this term, who explains that this word is translated in the Targum by negid and expression for drawing out. And this is the way how Elia very often integrates Rashi's commentary into his micrographic illustrations. You can see it here, give you an example. This is the city. It's the city gate, and in this Masorah Figurata, he explains the precise location of the mezuzah. That is the place where to pierce the slave's ear in the drawing, and it's exactly here on the doorpost. However, in our Masorah from the menorah, there's a striking deviation from the Rashi commentary, and this is the drawing of the menorah itself, that is the middle 7th branch, because it's higher than the other 6. This is also the case in the second menorah, for numbers 8. Rashi comments the phrase in verse 32, Yotzim mitzadeha, as follows. I think I have the quotation here. See, no, here's Rashi. Emerging from its size, they emerge to either size, diagonally extending and rising to the level of the height of the menorah, which is the middle branch. So the most important issue in Rashi's commentary is the end, the upper one even shorter than that, because the height of their upper and tops was equal to the height of the middle 7th branch, out of which the other 6 branches came out. Rashi took up the rabbinic explanation in Bavli Menachot 28b, according to which all the branches reach the height of the lamp, that is the middle branch. The illustrations in Leipzig and Munich match this description of the lampstand. Not that clear in the Bodleian Library manuscript Oppenheimer, Addenofolio 69. It's not that clear what is being painted here. This is a manuscript from the early 13th century. I cannot imagine that Elia was not aware of Rashi's explanation, all the more since he tries to draw the lamp and their wicks on the 6 branches exactly as Rashi explains in Numbers 8:2. The 7 lamps, the central lamp itself, which naturally gave light over against the shaft, and the 6 lamps which were on the 6 branches, the 3 on the east side of the central shaft should have their wicks turned towards the central one, and similarly the 3 on the west should have the ends of their wicks turned towards the central one. And this is what he tries to show here. A first inspection of other illustrations in later manuscripts from Catalonia, and you can compare Katrin's book on Jewish book art between Islam and Christianity from 2004, shows that the menorah was very often, if not always, drawn with its branches of the same height as the middle branch. We have therefore to assume that Elia intentionally deviated from Rashi's description. His illustration that draws the middle branch higher than the others may have been influenced maybe by Rashbam, who explains on verse 35, and not under the 2 branches which branch out from it, from the central shaft, which is the most important part of the lampstand, but it's not quite clear. More elucidating is Bochosho's commentary on verse 34, who writes, or who explains that, and all the branches were equal in the measure of their height, and they were made like branches of the tree. The shaft of the body of the lamp is higher than the others. 2 branches to its side on its side are a little lower in according to the diagonal line, and the second pair are lower than the first as they come out at the lowest point. So in drawing the middle shaft higher, Elia probably wanted to contribute to the pshat of these verses. Interestingly, some of the illustrations of the menorah in Christian manuscripts, as well as lampstands in the form of a menorah in contemporary Christian churches, display a similar shape, but I have to do further research on that subject. As to the Masoretic notes, we find that they concern central concepts of the equipment of the Mishkan. They are all in situ and should be read and related to the biblical text. Last but not least, we have to explain why this menorah is depicted lying on its side, whereas the one on number 8, on Numbers 8, you can see here, is upright. And as for now, I would assume that the lying menorah indicates that the tabernacle has not yet been erected and its furnishing not yet been set up finally, because this will be told only in Exodus 40 at the end of the book of Shemot. The second folio depicting a menorah in this manuscript is found on page 155 verso. Here, the menorah is presented standing upright. It's not entirely shaped of text, but rather a combination of text and drawing. We find micrographic Masoretic writing only at the 3 feet of the base, the left branch and parts of the right branch, while the rest is merely drawn. Although there is more Masoramania material to be found on the folio. Therefore, we have to find a reason why he refrained from filling the menorah and used only these 2 lists of annotations for this menorah, who are both attached to Numbers 8:7. The blue list quotes 2 verses that offer the deictic particle v'cho at the beginning of the verse, and I will not comment on this further. The other one, the orange one, Elen Yechidai, Bestehende Kudot, covers 10 verses listing words that are vocalized with tzere. This is a grammatical feature. The rest of the ornamental Masorah, see here, next to the menorah, consists of a repetition of the v'cho list, as well as 2 other short Masoramania lists attached to Numbers 8:11, Avodat Hashem, Shosha Simanim, and 8:20, V'chol Adat, and so on. The blue list refers to the Levi'im. The other two display lemmata that occur 3 times. The entire ensemble in this lower part of this folio is designed, to my mind, very sophistically. First of all, the menorah, very prominent, is to be seen in front view, and it refers to the service of Aaron. This way. Beginning of the page, speak to Aaron and tell him, when you light the lamps, the 7 lamps shall give light in front of the lampstand. So Aaron did so. He lit its lamps to light the area in front of the lampstand, as Hashem commanded Moshe. The 3-lined ornamental figurata in waves, starting with the Masoretic note of the threefold occurrence of Avodat Hashem, refers to the second major topic that the reader of this folio is to learn. 3 times in verses 11, 13, and 15. And Aaron shall offer the Levites before Hashem for a wave offering on the behalf of the children of Israel that might be theirs to do the service of Hashem. You shall set the Levites before Aaron and before his sons and offer them as a wave offering to Hashem. And finally, after that, the Levites shall go in to do the service of the tent of meeting, and you shall cleanse them and offer them as a wave offering. Rashi explains, 3 times is the command of waving the Levites mentioned in the section, the first referring to the sons of Kohat. Therefore, because it's they who refer to scripture, adds with regard to them that they may execute the service of the Lord. See the Masorah figurata in red. For it was upon them that the service of the most holy objects, the ark, devolved. The second refers to the sons of Gershon, and therefore scripture adds with regard to them a waving for the Lord, for upon them devolved the service of the holy objects, the hanging and the catches, which were visible in the Holy of Holies, and the third refers to the sons of Merari. By means of the drawing and the Midrash text, Elia draws the reader's attention to this central topic in Numbers 8, 1 to 26. From today's point of view, we'd say Elia's drawings are a prime example of didactically successful teaching of the main topics of the parasha at hand, the must-haves of the contemporary exegetical commentaries, and the peculiarities of the Masoretic note, or some peculiarities of grammar like the Tziri list. My next example is this page on 196, the tower, grammar, midrash, and halakha. The Masorah figurata displays a tower that refers to the territories and the fortified cities to conquer assigned to the Gadites, the Reubenites, and the half-tribe of Menashe. The biblical text refers to the kingdom of Sichon, king of the Amorites, and the kingdom of King Og of Bashan, the land with its various cities and the territories of the surrounding towns in Numbers 32. The tower, and this is the next picture, is designed from 3 elements. On the right pinnacle, on its left side, edited in yellow, we find a Masorah Manya note on the lemma biyad ramah, with raised head or defiantly. But Elia had decided not to display the synonym within the tower illustration, since the expression biyad ramah belongs to Numbers 33:3, which is already in Parashat Mas'i, whereas the illustration of the tower refers to the conquest of the cities that is told of the end of Parashat Matot. He therefore took up the Masorah Manya on biyad ramah in the ornamental element next to the tower on the left-hand side here, as well as other Masorah Manya entries to be dealt with below. The rest of the tower is dedicated to a Masorah Manya entry linked to Numbers 34, 32, 42, edited in red, and an extensive commentary by Elia in green that explains and comments on the exegetical connection of the Hebrew la without mapik and the Aramaic la not. Now, the Masoretic note refers to the verse and so on, and Vayikra la Novach bishmo, and he renaming it Novach after himself. The Masorah points to the fact that the preposition lamed and suffix third person feminine la in Novach, Vayikra la Novach, appears in this place without mapik. You can see it here. It says 3 times Rafeh, and is common in Ashkenazi manuscript with a Rafeh on the letter He. Elia took up this observation in the Masorah Power Note, indicating that this phenomenon is found in 3 places in scripture. The fact that the interlinear Targum version, Ukra la Novach, is written with a Rafeh as well indicates also the Aramaic La to be written without Mapik, which is not often the case. I checked some manuscripts of the Targum. As text of the tower, he displayed the Masorah Manya, edited in red, 3 times without Mapik, followed by the respective Simanim, Livnot Labait, to build a house for her in Zechariah 5, and Vayomer la Boaz, and Boaz said to her in Ruth 2:14, and finally referring to the Targum. The third element, marked in green, consists neither of Masorah Manya material nor of any other Masoretic texts, but of a commentary by Elia that reads as follows. And I found that the meaning of the phrase renaming it Novach is like the name would not last, as in to build a house for her, since it likewise did not exist, as lies have no legs and no basis. And in the same sense, we find it as regards the verse Boaz said to her, since when she said, though I'm not as much as one of your maidservants, the text says he said to her, it is to be understood as if he had said no or not, since you are not a maidservant, although you are a Moabite, since a female Moabite does not render a marriage halachically invalid. And in the same way, we have to interpret the word as regards the prohibition for the Ammonites to enter the congregation of the Lord, that he allowed her to join the congregation. I copied this from the Midrash Haninu. This lengthy commentary addresses various issues beyond the Masoretic statement on the 3 occurrences of the preposition lamed with suffix, and a he written without a mapik and written with rafeh. Elia takes up several exegetical discussions, but mentions only one source, the Midrash Haninu, explicitly. However, various sources that are behind this commentary can be made out. To begin with the penultimate sentence, the halacha, according to which only female Ammonite and Moabite converts are immediately permitted to marry into the congregation, is already documented in Mishnah and Talmud in Yevamot 8 and Bavi Yevamot 76b. However, the rabbinic argument does not provide an exegetical operation or any kind of discourse for this halachic decision. Rabbi Shimon simply refers to halachic tradition. Rashi's commentary does not mention the problem of Ruth's marriage. Probably it wouldn't have fit into his idea of pshat exegesis, referring to the immediate context at hand. Now, Rashi reads the following, gives the following comment. There is no mapik he. I have seen in the treatise of Rabbi Moshe Hadashan that this is so because this name did not last for her. Therefore, it's weak, that is written with a rafeh. For its midrashic explanation, uses it as the Aramaic la, no. But I'm puzzled what Rabbi Moshe expounds by means of the 2 similar words in the phrases, and now following Ruth and Zechariah, Vayomer la Boaz or Livnot Labait. Rashi raises the question as regards the explanation of Rabbi Moshe Hadashan, wondering about what Rabbi Moshe had drawn from this comparison of Numbers 32 with Zechariah 5 and Ruth 2:14, and how this exegetical explanation helps understanding the meaning of Numbers 32, verse 42. In Rashi's quotation, Moshe Hadashan's comment does not explicitly refer to the Masorah 3 times hey without mapik, but only mentions the other 2 verses from this Masoretic note. Rabbi Moshe Hadashan could have relied on Ruth Rabbah. No, that's too early, here. And she said, let me find favor in your sight, my lord, and so forth, though I be not as one of your handmaidens. And he said to her, heaven forbid, you are not from the handmaidens, Amahat, but rather from the mothers, Imahat. And similarly, and Noach went and took Kenat. This teaches that her own name did not remain to her. And similarly, and he said to me to build her house in the land of Shinar. This teaches that there is no salvation for falsehood. The Midrash explains why Ruth, as a Moabite woman, was allowed to enter the congregation and marry Boaz, thus entering a halachically valid marriage. Although the shift from la without mapik to la, lo, is not made explicitly, the exceptional spelling of la without mapik is behind the exegetical argument in Ruth Rabbah, since the two other verses from Numbers 32 and Zechariah 5 are quoted, and an exegetical argument made plausible, at least indirectly, by reference to the two other Bible verses in Zechariah 5 and Numbers 32. Elia presents the rabbinic argument that is based on the fact that Ruth was woman, but as his source, he mentions a certain Midrash Haninu. This is exciting, since except as part of the header of Pisgah 38 to 39 and Pesikta Rabbati, this text has come down to us only by a couple of quotations in other scholars' commentaries. We find it in Rabbi Elazar ben Yehuda of Worms Pirush Siddur Tfilah and Sefer Rokeach, as well as also in Sefer Shibbolei HaLeket, written by Tzidkiyahu by Avraham Anav, 13th century. And they have so far been regarded as the earliest sources that mention Midrash Haninu explicitly. Avraham Epstein already held the view that Rabbi Yosef Kara was the first to quote from it, but mistakenly labeled it Midrash Lechuna Ranana. To Epstein, the Tosafists refer to the Pesikta for Rosh Hashanah, Shabbat Shuvah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot as Midrash Haninu. To him, Midrash Haninu belonged to this Pesikta literature, and he argued that the terms Midrash and Pesikta were used without distinction. And this argument, by the way, was strengthened by Elizabeth Hollander in 2008, who stated in her books on Piyut commentaries that in manuscripts with Piyut commentaries, one finds that in some of the Chanukah Piyutim, their sources are labeled Midrash Chanukah, whereas others refer to a Pesikta for Chanukah. Therefore, according to Epstein, when Rabbi Elazar ben Yehuda had referred to Midrash Haninu, he was actually referring to Pesikta Ot Haninu that were part of Pesikta Rabbati. On the other hand, Rivka Ulma had already stated that in Avraham ben Azriel's Sefer Arugat HaBosem, Pesikta Rabbati can be referred to as Midrash. There is yet another reference to Midrash Haninu that is found in a collection of Torah commentaries, of which parts are ascribed to Rabbi Chaim Paltiel, who was born and raised in Falaise, Calvados, in the Normandy in France. Whether or not this comment can be ascribed to the specific author, it seems obvious that the French Tosafist school had access to a text they labeled as Midrash Haninu. With regard to Epstein's assumption that Midrash Haninu must in one or the other way be related to the Pesikta Ot, Pesikta Rabbati, or Pesikta Rav Kahana, one would expect Elias' lengthy commentary on Ruth's marriage also to be found in these texts. Pesikta de Rav Kahana, Pisgah 16, puts a lengthy argument in Boaz's mouth regarding the problem of Moabite and Ammonite proselytes, and displays the rejoinder regarding Ruth's being counted among the matriarchs. But Pesikta de Rav Kahana neither refers to the exceptional spelling of la without mapik, nor to the verses from Numbers 32 and Zechariah 5. There is, however, one text that meets all the criteria to serve as an immediate source for Elias' explanation, and this is Midrash Lekach Tov, also known under the name Pesikta Sutrata, written by Tuvia ben Rabbi Eliezer, who lived in Greece in the days of Rashi. Lekach Tov was known to the sages of Ashkenaz, Safat, and Italy already at the beginning of the 12th century, and Tashma wrote about it, and others kind of hold as well. In the explanation of Ruth 2:14, Lekach Tov not only offers the exegetical argument that Ruth is no longer in the status of the maid, but links this argument to the Hebrew expression Vayomer la Boaz, thereby adding the grammatical Masoretic observation of the missing mapik in the letter He. Furthermore, as already in Gut Rabbah 5.5, Lekach Tov refers to Numbers 34 and Zechariah 5.11 and closes the explanation with a proverb that lies are short-lived. Yeah, you can see it at the end, and also the reference to the Masorah. Though Elia does not display a literal quote of these texts, the parallels between his lengthy commentary and the text from Lekach Tov are obvious. Only Lekach Tov combines the Masoretic note of the missing mapik in the letter He and draws personal enhancement from a maid to a madam. However, the French Bible masters did not label Midrash Lekach Tov as Midrash Hanino. We must therefore assume that in 13th century northern France and Germany, some kind of Pesikta collection under the name Midrash Hanino must have circulated among the Bible teachers. It seems that this collection consisted primarily of types of text that combined exegetical and halachic topics, or ritual topics even, as typical for the Pesikta literature. Elias Tower in Vatican XIV would thus be the third and the fourth contemporary testimony that prove that Midrash Hanino must have been widely accepted and quoted. It's interesting why Midrash Hanino is the rabbinic source that is explicitly referred to in Elias' argument. It might have been that he used the eye-catching tower to either introduce or give authority to a hitherto unknown text. To my knowledge, and we are currently dealing a lot with this manuscript, Rashi is never mentioned explicitly as Rabbi Shlomo or some in the manuscript. It's simply known, and it's simply there. So it might have been that he wanted to give authority to the text, or it might have also been motivated by the same reason that Riffa Ulmer has made out with regard to the transmission of Pesikta Rabbati within the Jewish Academy of Narbonne, stating that, I quote, "The surrounding European Christian world would have been such a place where difference was experienced and where the possible obliteration of Jewish texts from the Middle East had to be prevented," end of quote. To sum up, on this folio, Elia brings together the various exegetical strings from Rabbi Moshe Hadashan, Rashi, the explanation of Rabbi Moshe Hadashan, the Midrash, and the Masoretic note. Embedded in the prominent illustration of the tower, he answers the question raised in Rashi's commentary, links the Masoretic notes dealing with the grammatical phenomenon with the Western European exegetical tradition, while at the same time combining them with a halachic topic belonging to the exegesis of the Book of Ruth, stemming from Midrash Hanino. The tower, in my view, is an outstanding example of the complex process of acculturation of the Oriental linear Masorah into Ashkenazi exegetical culture. Our last example, the Dudaim, integrating profane knowledge into a Jewish curriculum. I could have given many more examples, in particular, and just in short, one that shows that Elia wanted his readers also to gain profane knowledge as part of a general education and literacy. In folio 33, that displays the biblical story of Leah and Rachel disputing over the Dudaim that Reuben gave to his mother. This part of this paper relies indeed mainly on the master thesis to be revised and published as the Corpus Masoreticum working paper by Bettina Burkhardt, who is currently preparing a PhD thesis. Whereas Rashi on Genesis 30 explained the Dudaim as siglei, in Arabic Yasmin, his commentary in the Talmud in Bavli Brachot and Bavli Shabbat refers to siglei as violets. Even Ezra identified them as Yafrochin, as in the Talmudim, while at the same time adding that they appear in the form of human beings with extremities like heads and hands. Elia draws a female and male mandrake. one can clearly distinguish a triangular body shape, broad shoulders, narrow hips as representing the male, and an hourglass shape, broad shoulders, narrow waist, broad hips as representing a female creature. It's very clearly to be seen. Elodie Attia saw kind of two boys here, but I think it's very clear that these are mandrakes. Although, again, in this Masora Figurata, he does not follow Rashi as regards the male illustration. Rashi's interpretation was referred to in the drawing of a circle ornament embellished with flowers and an arch like a trellis for flowery vine or yasmin. So it's an echo of Rashi's commentary. Most interesting is the animal depicted here, with its tail upward, suggesting that Elia wanted to depict a dog tied to one of the mandrakes. In her master thesis, Bettina Burkhardt investigated various Jewish and non-Jewish sources, among them Moshe Hadasham, the Yalkut Shimoni, and in particular Pseudo-Apuleius, Canterbury, 11th century, on the other. Whereas the Jewish sources in most cases connect a donkey to the Dudaim, the English tradition of Pseudo-Apuleius in his De Herbarum Medicaminibus, where we find the depiction of a male and female mandrake, a dog is being tied to the male mandrake. Burkhardt found out that Elias' illustration represents the first known depiction in a Jewish work of an ancient myth that purports that mandrakes are magical plants which kill any living being that every living being that uproots them. And the myth recommends tying it to a dog and enticing the animal to rip the plant out, which will leave the dog dead, but the human gatherer alive. There's still work to do as regards the question how these English traditions could have got into Elias' knowledge horizon. But think of the French conquest of Normandy from 1203 to 1204 and the associated transfer of knowledge. And one could also trace this iconographic tradition line of the handwriting traditions of the Pseudo-Apuleius De Herbarum. However, the essence of Burkhardt's investigations are in a way exciting when she concludes by drawing a dog tied to a mandrake, the first depiction of this kind in Jewish culture that we know of. Elijah positions himself in the discussion about Dudaim rather more in the Gentile tradition, which freely attributed magic abilities to mandrakes, and in which one was dependent on the involuntary help of a dog for the harvest. Conclusion. Books were a rare and costly commodity. We may assume that Usher commissioned his manuscript not just so he could read it by himself, but also to impart knowledge to his families or pupils. We don't know whether he tutored his children in scriptures, whether he was a Bible teacher at Kara, or whether he made the codex available to such a teacher so that this person could educate members of his Jewish community, children and adults alike. But we can assume that Usher commissioned the Figurata drawings and probably not requested purely ornamental embellishments. Although Elia didn't record why Usher ordered this manuscript, the style of representation allows us to draw some conclusions. Despite the very small letters, the Masoretic material was and is readable for people used to this type on these sorts of marginal notes. While it is highly unlikely that anyone would have wanted to peruse every single commentary alongside the biblical text, it would have been convenient to have this kind of information at hand so one could make use of it should the need arise. On the other hand, although every figurative drawing embeds at least one famous Rashi command, and there's in each and every figurata, there is a Rashi hidden. It's sometimes, for us, it's like a game. Who is the first to find the Rashi? But you can be sure that there's a Rashi or that there's some kind of discussion with Rashi embedded in it. Be it a biblical, comment on a biblical verse, topic, or an halachic issue, the manuscript does not contain the entire Rashi verse by verse in the margins, which can be interpreted as a hint to the fact that in northern France, the biblical text, including the Targum as its immediate exegetical hypertext, was still awarded a higher exegetical authority, or it might have been that in this Christian environment, the Bible should become, or should be awarded a higher exegetical authority. The details in the Tower, the Menorot, or the Dudaim show that his depictions not only convex Masoretic knowledge, but also rabbinic and medieval exegetical discourses, as well as profane knowledge. To someone sufficiently well acquainted with these writings, a glance at the drawings was enough to recall the relevant information to mind. As such, with each new reading of the Codex, the figurative elements function as mnemonic devices for the teacher, the head of the family, or all the people who should be instructed and inspired. Since the Torah is read once a year from beginning to end, everyone involved encountered these Masoretic illustrations many times over the course of his or her life. Given that younger pupils' attention was quite likely focused on the drawings, the weekly lecture of Torah would have naturally led to lessons on the incorporated additional elements of commentary. Asher's manuscripts can thus be regarded as a carrier of basic Jewish learning that should grow along with its readers, kind of an all-in-one Bible for 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15. The opening pages in Vatican XIV with the figurative Masorah for each parasha are like open doors, and they were open from the very beginning. But the more educated their readers got, the more they could perceive what was in the room. For Elia, as the son of a well-educated father, as a matter of course, this knowledge should and could go beyond the classical Jewish sources. And stay tuned, some of the material used here will be, you can read in the forthcoming papers, and I thank you for your attention.